Hello and welcome to Expats Everywhere. If you could tell us your name, where you're from, and a little about yourself.
Hey guys, I'm Pierce. I'm from Albuquerque, New Mexico in the United States originally, but now I'm living here in Ho Chi Minh City in Vietnam.
And Pierce has a channel on YouTube. We've just done a collaboration with him. My wife Kaylee has done a cool video with him as they go back and forth talking about Ho Chi Minh City from an expat perspective and a tourist perspective. Pierce, let's talk a little bit about what countries you've worked in as an expat.
Worked in as an expat right now would just be Vietnam, although I've actually spent long periods of time studying and kind of doing a little bit of work in Belgium, Italy, Germany, and Thailand as well.
Okay, well, let's dig in specifically on Vietnam. What's it like working in Vietnam?
Working in Vietnam can both be really rewarding and really challenging. It certainly depends on the company that you're working for. So if you're working, let's say, for like a European or an American company in a culture that you understand, then you're just dealing with the I live in Vietnam kind of situation, and you have to adjust to that. But you don't have to adjust your workflow. I worked, however, for a Vietnamese branch of the World Wildlife Fund, a really famous NGO. And while it was really nice to work here, and you can do something really passionate and environmental focused, and you're saving the world, the cultural differences were hard. There's hierarchical changes, there's age changes, there's the way that you talk to each other, there's the language barrier. So if you come to Vietnam to work for a Vietnamese company or an Asian company, you have to be aware that there are cultural things you're going to have to overcome to be successful.
Okay. And what types of jobs are available for English-speaking expats in particular?
A lot of people come here to, of course, teach English. This is like Southeast Asia, so there's always jobs for that. But there's also a budding tech industry here, and there's lots of jobs in marketing and copywriting and sales. And there's a lot of Vietnamese companies headhunting native English speakers simply on the basis that you can do this client interaction on a level that they're just unable to attain.
Well, what does a typical day look like for you?
Typical day for me, because I'm a digital nomad and I work from home. I kind of sleep in. I hop on the laptop. I tutor English and German online, and I also work on my own company and I make YouTube videos. So a typical day for me is just spending a lot of time at home. But actually, if you were to work here, when I was working here, you're up really early. The days here start early because they have that kind of siesta mentality, that middle of the day where take a nice break. Like people would be in the office with the headrests, like passed out. So it's like that kind of mentality. So you're up early, you're in the office at 8, maybe 7:30, and you're taking a nice break. Maybe you're going to lunch, actually going home, maybe for an hour or two, and then coming back to work. So the flow here is a little bit different.
Well, you've got to be up early because of those chickens, let's be honest.
You're not wrong. They're more of a curse than a blessing, but you kind of learn to appreciate them as your brothers in the street.
Fair enough, man. Well, speaking of being a digital nomad, I'm assuming that the internet connection is strong, it's fast.
People love Vietnam because of the strong internet connection. They say the Philippines is a great place to be, but a lot of people don't like to be digital nomads because of the connection. So, funny anecdote. While I was here, sharks destroyed our underwater fiber optic cable for the internet, if you can believe that, like sharks. So that happened every once in a while. That's actually happened twice. So I'm not sure what's going on, but internet's cheap and it's easy. And if you have an Ethernet cable like I do, good for working.
Awesome, man. Do you have any friends that are foreigners that work in different jobs in different industries?
Yeah, absolutely. I have a few people who have worked in different NGOs. There's a lot of NGOs about the environment here, and some sort of social programs for students, for women's rights. There's a lot of people here because it's kind of, they say it's a developing country. I would really argue it's not. It's super modern here. And I have a friend who works in finance for a bank. This is kind of like the new tiger economy of Southeast Asia. So if you want to work in tech, if you want to work in banking, if you want to work in finance, there's lots of jobs, not necessarily here today, but next year, the year after, it's going to explode. So that's why it's nice to be here. There's a good vibe, and there's a lot of co-working meetups. There's a lot of startup meetups, and a lot of Europeans and Americans, or foreigners in general who want to start online companies, they come here because of the cost of living for sure.
That's awesome. Is the first world experience mainly in Ho Chi Minh, or do you feel like that's kind of a blanket statement for the whole country?
So obviously the quality of life in Ho Chi Minh is higher, just as it is in Hanoi, because that's where the money is. But compared to developing countries that I've been to, like Myanmar or India, Bangladesh, that I've been to, yeah, the standard here is just higher. People live very cleanly. They have really good road infrastructure. They have electricity, very remote area, and the internet connection. Like if you're in the mountains in some random place, like you've still got 4G. It's wild.
Okay.
Which is shocking. It's like you wouldn't expect it. The best lit roads I think I've seen in my life are actually here in Vietnam, like
Okay.
on like highways.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, you mentioned a kind of a key term, which was standard of living. So let's talk a bit about that. How much can you earn there?
So it again depends if you're working for a Vietnamese company or you're doing the digital nomad situation. So I would say the average salary for someone, if you're like a job seeker here, starts around $1,200 a month, from what I saw, because I was actually doing some marketing work here, all the way up to $2,000 a month. The average salary in Vietnam is only $350 a month for the average worker. So you're talking 4 times, 8 times higher than the average salary.
Yeah.
Which is awesome. And then if you're doing your own thing, I mean, it's on you obviously to make money, but some people live these kind of lavish lifestyles here, and it depends what you want to do. But if you're making $1,000 a month, like you can take taxis anywhere you want to, you can go out to eat every day, you can afford a studio apartment or share a room in a house. You can't have a palace, but like you can live an awesome lifestyle and so cheap.
Okay. How much of that 1,000 or 1,200, focusing in on 1,200, how much of that could you save and still live an awesome lifestyle?
I can give my own anecdotal thing. So I was paying like I had a studio apartment that my company was paying for, so I went like a little nicer because now I'm in a pretty standard Vietnamese home. You guys can see the chicken neighborhood that I live in. Um, but yeah, so I was living in this super swanky studio apartment with like a maid that came 3 times a week, and like free water. Because you can't drink the tap water here, so they bring water up to your house. And that was like $550 a month, which is way more expensive than it needs to be. And I took taxis every day to and from work. If you're on a motorbike, you're not in a natural taxi. And I was spending about $60 a month on that, maybe $80 a month. And then if you're a street food guy, like I'm a street food fiend, you can easily spend $100 a month and like eat and never have to cook. If you like to cook, it's a bit more expensive, but if you had $1,000, I would say if you are a frugal person, you could get away with spending $800 a month.
Okay, awesome. And if you guys are interested in learning more about Vietnamese street food, we're going to put the links in our description below to some of the videos that Pierce has done on his channel for his foodie adventures in Southeast Asia and more in particular, Vietnam. Let's talk about a startup there. How much money do you need to start up in Ho Chi Minh City?
I mean, so for example, what I always do when I move to a new city, and what's easier to do here, and what I would recommend doing is get yourself an Airbnb for 10 days. There's huge expat groups here, like 100,000 people, and there's a lot of like housing representatives who you're like, I'm looking for a house, blah 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 blah, blah, and they'll contact you. There's 20 of them. They'll contact you, and it's not like, oh, you can see our house at this time. They'll literally come pick you up and take you to the flat. So
Brilliant.
in that case, I would just say kind of take it easy the first few days. Make sure you like have like a game plan. But startup costs, yeah, is if you have $1,000, like you're gonna have to pay a deposit and first month's rent. My deposit for this place is like $300. It's just 1 month's rent typically, unless you're doing a long-term house. So maybe you have a family, maybe you have kids, maybe you're looking for like a longer-term situation. Typically, they want you to put more money down. But you don't need a fortune to move to Ho Chi Minh. You just need to give yourself a few moments to like adjust and to make the smart decision. See the place before you rent it. That's my one anecdote.
All right, awesome. How should someone pack and what's the weather like?
So Vietnam is super diverse. If you're in Hanoi, you're gonna want like some winter gear because it rains. It actually does get cold. But if you're in Ho Chi Minh, they have two seasons here. It's the dry season where it's just hot as hell. There's the rainy season where it's super humid and also hot as hell. So you're definitely not gonna need a big suitcase. I am a minimalist myself, so don't overpack. If you need something, you can buy it. There's more cheap clothing in this city than probably any other place on the planet. A lot of companies, Adidas, Nike, North Face, they all have factories in Vietnam.
Okay.
So you can even get super high quality, like either fake or also just the real stuff, like from the source, from the tap.
Nice, man. Well, are there any things that you can't find in Vietnam that you would recommend people to bring?
That's an awesome question. If you are a tall man or woman, I guess, shoes. It's a weird thing, but Vietnamese people are small. It's not weird that they're small, but it's weird being here because I went into Nike, for example. I'm like, hey, do you guys have size 12? The American shoes are 45 in Europe. The biggest size they had was 9. And this was a common theme to every store I went into. So bring some flip-flops, bring some shoes because you might not be able to get some unless you fly to Singapore. Seriously.
Okay, that's really good to know. That is really, really valuable info. All right. Can you get things shipped there pretty easily?
Um, it's a good question. So, communist government, they're gonna check what's in your stuff. So be careful. And I've read a lot of stuff online about theft for like electronic goods and stuff. So for example, I had to buy a new MacBook. Instead of ordering it from the U.S. and shipping it, because there's no Apple store in Vietnam. That's a good thing to know as well. I've decided to actually just fly to Singapore and buy it in Singapore.
How safe is it there, and do you feel safe on a personal level?
Yeah, so I think being a man, there's always the extra level of security that you can experience in the world. But it's super, super, super safe. I would argue Southeast Asia in general, minus maybe Cambodia for just theft reasons, is the safest place to be. The people are super friendly, and I have tons of female friends here who feel super comfortable driving at night, walking at night by themselves. Vietnamese people are very friendly, very generous, and the only thing to really pay attention to, and it happens to lots of people, especially girls, is getting your phone stolen out of your hand. So if you're on the back of a motorbike, put the phone away. If you're walking in the street and you're like looking like a lost tourist, put your phone away. One of my friends, like literally 2 days ago, had a phone ripped out of her hand. But that's like the only thing that's going to happen. It's not like Chicago. It's not like Paris. It's a beautifully simple, safe place to live here.
Okay. Well, you talked about the friendly people. So, how do you meet people, and what can you do for fun?
Yeah. So this is a super fun city. This is like a city built for relaxation, chilling with your friends, hanging out. So there's like endless coffee shops, endless bars. The nightlife here is insane. If you're into that sort of thing, if you want to party with Vietnamese people, you can do that. If you want to go to a French style house club, you can also do that. And meeting people is actually easier than a lot of other cities I've been to, mostly because you can get on couch surfing, for example, and you can go hang out with people. I always do that in any city I'm in, but here it's worked particularly well because it's a bit isolating here because a lot of people don't speak English. So if you're a foreigner, there are a lot of ways to find people. So couch surfing, we have our expat group. There's a lot of also expat-owned bars and cafes that do events. And people who come here are just open. I don't know how to explain it, but expats in Asia are just down to hang, for a lack of a better term.
True.
And the majority of my friends I've just met on a night out, and it's awesome. There's amazing people from all over the world, and you just got to be willing to get out there.
Well, do you have a visa, and can you tell us what the visa process is like?
I do have a visa. Americans have the opportunity for a 1-year multiple entry visa. All you have to do is leave every 3 months. I was here on a business visa before. If you have a business visa, it's super easy to get. Your company just needs to file some paperwork, and basically they'll fax you over a copy of fax or email or whatever. They'll fax you over a copy of the official receipt. They do visa on arrival services here, so you get to the airport, or you could cross like from the Cambodian border too. Yeah, you pay the price, you hand them the paper that says you're allowed the visa, and there it is.
Voila.
COVID virus is a bit confusing, obviously, but you can get a visa extension here quite easily. There's a lot of visa agents within the country, and they handle temporary residence cards. If you're trying to stay here like long term, they handle long term visas, and they handle like tourist visas. The one thing I can say is that Vietnam is changing their visa rule in like 2 days, and so you used to be able to. You can still get a 3-month visa. You can still get a 6-month visa, but you will now have to leave every 1 month instead of every 3 months, which I would argue is going to make it quite a bit more challenging to live here.
Okay. And can you tell us how the healthcare is, and would you feel comfortable getting a procedure done?
Yeah, so they have Western hospitals here with a very high standard. I would probably feel comfortable getting a procedure. I would just really make sure that I found a doctor or especially a surgeon that spoke English. Obviously, that's the number one thing. The awesome part is there's pharmacies all over the city. So if you have some sort of like condition or whatever, like I have asthma, for example, going to the pharmacy and getting drugs that would typically require a doctor's appointment, you can just get over the counter here, which is super nice. They've definitely regulated some of that, and the hospitals they can be quite pricey because if you're wanting an English doctor and you're wanting some sort of particular service that normal Vietnamese people aren't asking for, you're going to have to pay for it. But I guess a lot of people forget that people come specifically to Thailand, to Vietnam, to Southeast Asia to do actually for medical tourism. They have a good R&R situation here. You can go to a beach town, you can go have a surgery, and go drink, I don't know, coconuts for 2 weeks.
Yeah, it's definitely a thing for sure. Well, would you say that Vietnam is a good travel hub? Why or why not?
Yeah, totally. I think Ho Chi Minh or Hanoi are the ultimate travel hub cities. Ho Chi Minh especially because the flights are cheaper. It's kind of the same deal as living in Singapore. You're just kind of connected to everything. The one thing I can say is that Ho Chi Minh is not as well connected as Bangkok or Singapore or Tokyo. You typically have to do a little bit of a stopover. But I found some really interesting flights that were direct. Like I flew to Kolkata, India, like direct flight at 2 a.m. So you never know. But the best part is it's like your quality of life here is so high, and it just feels like you can really get into it, feel comfortable here. So it's a great place to choose as a hub because it's a great place to always come back to.
Nice.
I think that's
Yeah.
the point.
Well, before we wrap up, can you tell us a little bit about your channel? What do you do over there? Why should people come visit?
Yeah, sure. So I'm really interested in food, travel, and culture, and my goal is to really teach the viewer a little bit about life here in Vietnam, but also life around the world. I think food is a lens to experience the real culture and the real people of a place. And there's so many stories that you can have, over a plate of food or explaining a food, and it makes people feel like less scary. Like if I can eat with you and understand you on a very personal level, it's like super important. So in my channel, Tales from the Road, I try to walk around, capture some interesting things, teach you some stuff along the way. And I love Anthony Bourdain. That is like my dude, if you guys know him. And I would love to emulate something like that, a little bit more professional down the line. But for now, we're getting down and dirty with a little camera and eating some street food. So come along.
You got the look, my brother. You do. Well,
thank you, man.
Let's wrap up with this last question before I beg these people to become subscribers of this channel if they want to know about expat life, because we cover a whole host of countries. I got to ask you, I ask it to everybody, what are the pros and cons of living in Vietnam?
Pros and cons. So the pros, as I said in a video you guys will certainly see on my channel if you want to subscribe and check that out, is the convenience. The best part about Vietnam is that it has both a very good formal sector. So if I want like legit services, people are so overly willing to help you. It's like I actually find the service in the U.S. pretty good. The service here in Vietnam is stellar. Like if you're not happy, they will try their darndest to like make it happen. And also the informal sector is awesome. If you have something that's broken or you or it's 3 in the morning and you just like you're hungry, you need something, there's always someone providing some sort of service. Maybe they're sleeping, but you can be like, hello, they'll wake up, they'll be like, oh, food, okay, and they'll like get the pan on. It's not like you're inconveniencing, which is the most awesome part. I would say the cons of living in Vietnam, some people say the pollution. I actually don't have a huge deal with it. The traffic, sometimes it's quite overwhelming, and the safety standards here for what's allowed on the road and what's not. It depends if you consider it a pro or a con, but unless you learn Vietnamese, you'll never be part of the culture. Um, if you want to live here for a long time, I've met a lot of foreigners, Spanish people, Nigerian people, and they speak Vietnamese fine. And you can interact, but you'll never be in the tribe, which I think is okay. But if you don't learn Vietnamese, you can walk around at a bit, you're kind of like a gimmick, or you're kind of like a tourist object for them sometimes. So you can get a lot of stares, you can get a lot of like, you can be pestered a lot, not in a negative way. You kind of like, you warrant it by being here. But it's something that you have to get used to. And some days, like I walk around and I wish I could wear a sticker that says, I live here, I'm not a tourist. So don't try and rip me off, or don't try and, don't rob me. Like I know Vietnamese people who can help me. Like I have a system here, like I'm a local guy. I wish there was some sort of badge I could wear so that people would know. But you kind of learn to stay out of the places where people kind of harass you anyway. So, yeah, so I would say those are the things, but life here is amazing. I love Ho Chi Minh. It will always have a really big place in my heart, and I'm so happy I chose this as my city.
Awesome, man. Expats and travelers, if you enjoyed this video, please give it a like. Go take a look at Pierce's channel because he's doing some awesome stuff over there. We have really enjoyed connecting with him. So Pierce, thank you so much. Go take care of your chickens. We really appreciate you doing this video with us. Talk to you later, man.
Yeah, later. So happy to be here. Thanks.
Peace.